It gives me huge pleasure this morning to introduce Julie, who is witty, warm, and wonderfully funny. If you go on Instagram, I go on Instagram, even though it's probably not age appropriate, you will see her described as a supplier of hot takeaway food and novels. So that is probably the most interesting Instagram bio I have ever read, actually. So we'll hear more about that in a bit. The first thing I wanted to ask you was how much of your story is based on your own life and that of your family, please? If you can just sum up what the story is about, so in case anybody here hasn't read it,
Okay.
And then give us a bit of insight into that, please.
Okay, well, the story is about 3 generations of a family living and working together in a Chinese takeaway in a quiet part of West Wales, which is a bit like where we are now. The granddaughter, Amy, she's come back to live in the family home after having lived away for the last 16 years. And while she's back home, she's going to work on solving the family mystery, which is why her grandfather and his son-in-law, the son-in-law is Amy's dad, they haven't spoken to each other for as long as she can remember. And she's 34, so that's a long time they haven't been speaking to each other. And then Grandpa collapses in the street. So she really has to get going if she wants to make this family a happy family. So that's basically the story. And I'm really pleased that people seem to think it's a lot more autobiographical than it is. People have stopped me in the street and said, oh, the grandfather in your book, he's just like your grandfather. And I always say, oh, thank you, that's great. But I don't think it can really be true because he passed away before I was born. So he is completely fictional. But there are definitely real life parallels. But I think the secret is to take like a small speck from your own life and spin it out into something that's completely fictional. So yes, you take a little bit of your own life and you spin it out.
Yeah. Great. And one of the things I really love about the book is that you manage to be funny one moment and then really poignant and moving the next. Can you give us a bit of insight into how on earth do you write like that?
I think it's very nice of you to say that. Thank you very much. In terms of the poignant, well, I think in terms of the funniness is to do with observation, really, and seeing what's going on around you. There's always, I think, around town here lately, I've seen 2 young men, and what they do is they walk the dog and they read a book at the same time. So there they are, walking the dog like this. And there's 2 problems with that. One is it's very dangerous because you could get run over. And the other problem is that you're not noticing what's going on around you. And I think in this day and age where if you go on a train journey or a bus journey, in the old days that you and I remember, Pippa, you would just sit there looking out the window, looking at the other people. But now people are just in their phone straight away looking at this. You have to notice what's going around you, because if you notice what's going around you, the humor comes automatically, particularly if you live somewhere like here where men walk dogs while reading a book, or there's always something going on around you that you can notice, but you just have to hone your eye to notice what's going on. So that's where the humor comes from. And if you look at the book, there are plenty of instances where you can think, oh, she must have seen something very similar to that, and then it sprung off in her mind. In terms of the poignancy, I think perhaps it's helped by the fact that there are 2 timelines in the story. So I always thought of the modern story as the scope for funniness, and the old story is the scope for being a bit more moving. I don't know, I think it's practice as well. This book was very long to begin with, much longer than it is now, practically twice the length.
Wow.
So you write a lot and you cut away a lot.
Yeah.
So it's just practice, really. I don't really know. I'm sorry, I can't really give
No, that's a very good answer. I mean, I can see blokes walking dogs and reading catching on and becoming a cult in Carmarthen?
No.
Sort of, I don't know how many of you here know Carmarthen, but it is a very quirky place. I'm saying Carmarthen, of course, the town in the book is Causmenin, but I'm from Carmarthen, so Julie and I have a lot in common, and it is a very quirky place.
This book was originally called Takeaway, and it took the genius of the publishers and publishing industry to persuade me that it should be called Happy Families, because it really is more about families than just about a takeaway.
Yeah.
And the families and the arguments and the general sort of gritty day-to-day of family life make up a lot of the story in a way that I think I'm hoping transcends any ideas about diversity or different generations and things. I hope everybody, when they look at this family, they think, oh yeah, my family's a bit like that.
Yes. Yeah.
In a way, the requirements of the story dictate the characters to a certain extent. In terms of plot, again, I struggled with that, and people have said that the plot probably isn't quite as exciting as it could be, but that also reflects my feeling is that you don't need to have loads of murders or mayhem to make a story. So I tried to think about something that was slightly interesting but not too extraordinary. And I did audition a lot of stories. There were huge subplots that have been cut out of this, involving people being duffed up and people losing money and all sorts. So there was a huge subplot about gambling, and I had to spend like 3 months going to Ladbrokes and places like that and sitting in listening to gamblers talk about it, but all of that got kicked out. So it is a question of just putting the time in as well, putting the time in, writing loads of things.
Okay, now one of the things we chatted about before the session was tips for writers. So have you got some of those, please?
Right, okay. I think we touched on some of the tips for writers already, which is that you need to be observant and look around and notice things. And I think even for the writers of something like a thriller or something more exciting than this, an eye for detail helps. And one of the things that helps with this, they're called a line a day diaries. These are my two of them. Oh no, you can't see, there they are. They're pretty battered because you do 5
Yeah, we can see them.
5 years.
Yeah.
So what you do is, it may be, people say writers make notes, do this, do that. It's really hard to do, but if you know you've got one of these, and there's about 5 lines, I don't know if you, I'll try and show it up without showing the actual content, but you can see, you write in the details of your day, and sometimes something really mundane can kick you off, but the point is to write something about your day, and sometimes you might go back and go, oh, I can't think of anything to write about. And if you go back and look at things, it might kick you off. So that's one of the things. So make notes if you can't do full writing. Let's see. The other thing is to be patient. As I've said, I started this book in 2012, and I think I probably finished the first version about 4 years later. And then there was a lot of editing and there was a lot of cutting down. I will say that I got professional feedback on it, which is, to be honest, quite expensive. But you do feel, before you get to the stage of professional feedback, hopefully you will have found some online friends to share details with. So what I did is that I signed up for an online writing course. So there's a certain level of tuition there. And also the main thing is that you meet lots of other writers. For a long time, before online writing groups became a thing, you would just write privately and not tell anybody. And although you can show it to your friends and family, if they're nice, they're not going to say, oh, your book's a bit rubbish. And sometimes perhaps just your book isn't their sort of thing. So it's good to have somebody outside the family to look at your book. So if you can, and you can do that for free now. There are all sorts of readers and writers groups online that you can share information with. And once you've ironed out the first problems, you might want to consider getting professional feedback. It is expensive, but it feels like you're taking your book seriously when you do that.
Yeah. Do you go to a consultancy then for that? Is that how you do it?
I think if you just go online, there are all sorts of people doing it. Some people do it as part of a company. Some people do it as part of an online writing school. Some people do it individually. Obviously there's different levels of quality. Some people might be just somebody who's just like sprung up and decided to do it, and they may not have the best knowledge to do it. But I would definitely go with looking at it with people informally first. The other thing is persistence and patience and hanging in there. You often hear stories about writers who've been rejected so many times and had so many difficulties. And I feel, I mean, I'm talking more about the publication process now than the writing process. I feel that I'm not really qualified to talk about this due to the way that I won the Richard and Judy competition and got published that way, because the other conventional ways of submitting to an agent and getting it published, they didn't work out for me. But also means that you can get published through unconventional means. You should try everything. Once you've written your book and you feel it is the best it can be, you should enter competitions, you can self-publish, you should do all of those things. And I will say that even after this book entered the competition, there was still work to do on it. So nothing is ever perfect. You think it's as perfect as you can make it, but that's only as far as you can see. Other people will help you make it better.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you very much for all that.
Yes,
It's very
patience.
It's very encouraging to people.
Mm.
And are you, I'll just ask you one more question before we hear another reading, please. But are you very disciplined in how you write? I mean, you do a line a day, obviously, but are you, sort of somebody who gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning and then writes for 6 hours or?
No, no, but I am more an expert at, oh, I got 15 minutes free now. Let's just dive in and do a bit. The other thing not to do is to wait until the muse hits you, because that will never happen. And in a way, it's the moments, if you sit down, you think, oh, right, I've got 4 hours now, I'm going to sit down and knuckle down for 4 hours. Not a lot happens. Whereas if one day you're just walking past your laptop and you think, oh, I've got 20 minutes now, I'll just nip on for 20 minutes. Those 20 minutes can be really, really good. So there's no way of knowing beforehand what's going to work. The other thing about it is that not all of the writing happens when you're sitting at your laptop typing. A lot of the writing happens. I know we made a joke when we promoted this about dog walking and the role in the writing career. But a lot of the time when you're just walking along, sometimes I just sit here and I go, oh, nothing's happening, let's go out. I was waiting for him to jump up then when he heard me say that, but he hasn't heard me. So we'll go out and I'm walking along, and you think about your characters in your head, you think about the situations, and they pop into your head, and you rush back at the end of the walk and you dive down and write it down straight away.
It's a book that makes you just feel very warm, I think. And I know my friend Ruth is here, and I know that's a really strong feeling she got from it. We're neighbours, so we've chatted about it a lot. So would you like to tell us now a little bit about what other writers influence you and who do you admire?
Yeah, I think the writers I like are quiet and affectionate, really. I think the two things I like to have in the books I read, which I know is the opposite of what lots of young women like to read now, is I like to have heart and I like to have humor. Those are the two things. Whereas I think people who read Lee Child like to have murder and death, if possible. So I'm not a big fan of those. So I'm a big fan of David Nichols. And yes, the thing about David Nichols is that I feel that he gets better with each book. So even though he started out, he made his breakthrough the one day, which most people enjoy, he just keeps getting better and better. And they're all romances, which I don't currently do. The other book I've got, which I brought with me, I'm not sure because of anyway, it's called Early Morning Riser by Catherine Heine. And Catherine Heine is, again, she's an American writer, and her first book is Standard Deviation, and this is Early Morning Riser, which came out last week. But again, she writes about small incidents, family affection, and not just family affection in blood relatives, but also a community. In the second book, she describes a community which I could imagine is like Tasmanian transplanted into the American Midwest, where everybody knows each other and everybody looks out for each other. And sometimes bad things happen. Well, bad things happen to everybody in the end in one way or another, and how the community pulls together. But also it's full of love, it's full of affection. I don't want to have to heat it up in a pan tonight. The smell it makes. Ray and I exchanged glances. We know quite a lot about this. We heated up a tin of cat food when we were children, unattended every evening while our parents worked in the shop downstairs. Unexpectedly hungry, we served up whiskers on toast, and it was surprisingly tasty. I don't know if they still make whiskers, but it did smell great and it smelled lovely.
I love it. Thank you very much. And I love the neat and tidy stools. I think that's quite a feature in West Wales life, because there's this pet food, which I know is made locally, Burns.
Yes.
And I think it's probably a myth, but people who own pets in London have told me they use Burns.
It's very expensive.
Because
it's also
of
very good as well.
Neat and tidy stools are the results. So,
yes, the dog owners among us will know that a neat and tidy stool that picks up easily is like...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So thank you so much,
you.
Julie. Thank you, everyone who's come. Just to remind you, this is the book. It's wonderful. It's a lovely gift for people. I need a bit of an uplift. W.H. Smith. Thank you all for coming to support Llandeilo Lit Fest.
And before you go, sorry, Grace, good luck with your walk in the Brecon Beacons, by the way. Grace is attending, I think, and she has an Instagram book club, and she's doing a sponsored walk at the Brecon Beacons. So
well done. Well done, Grace. That sounds great.
Okay. Sorry, carry on then, Pippa, sorry.
No, it's all right. And thanks to Dragon's Garden Bookshops for the sponsorship. You know, if you're down Llandeilo Way, please pop in there. If you're not on our mailing list, then, you know, you can find us in the usual places. Thanks so much. And if you're going to anything else in the festival, then please do enjoy. And a very big thank you to you, Julie, and good luck with the next one. Looking forward to hearing more about that as and when. Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Have a lovely day.